Call the meeting back to order with agenda item 22, proposed Washoe County Federal Lands Bill update. Chairman Wallace and Habitat Division Administrator Alan Janae. We'll start off with subsection A, proposed Washoe County Federal Lands Bill update, Habitat Division Administrator Alan Janae and Wildlife Staff Specialist John Tull. Informational. The department will provide a report on the proposed Washoe County Federal Lands Bill. Mr. Janae.
Good morning, Chairman Wallace and Commission. Yes, I'm here to talk about the Washoe County Lands Bill. As you can see on the agenda support, there is a website. I noticed that these maps aren't coming up that well, so I just wanted to call that out. If you're in the audience, you can take a look at it there, or when you get home, it's got all of the information that I've got here. I didn't have their shapefiles to recreate maps, so I've basically pirated their copies and tried to make them as legible on this screen as possible. So I'll kind of walk through it, but as I mentioned, the website is on the agenda support material, and you can take a look there. When you look at this map here, the proposed withdrawal boundary is that red outline. You can best see it at the very north end of the map near Bedell. If you were to describe that boundary in acres, it's 436,534 acres. That's a total disposal boundary. But you'll notice that only the public lands are identified in brown and green. Those are BLM and Forest Service. The federal land within that boundary is 148,983 acres. And currently, the transfer requests that are identified on the Washoe County side are 15,405 acres. This has been a reduction as this has been up and been in the works. I believe their original proposal was 35,000 acres. And so they have been refining it, and I'll describe some of that here today. One of the other things that's also attached to this lands bill is a wilderness component. A number of wilderness areas are proposed to be within the same bill. I'll describe those at the end of this PowerPoint. So moving forward and zooming in to the north area. Let's see if I can figure out my technology here. All right, here we go. The joys of not admitting that you don't need bifocals, the up and down. So when you look at the proposal that Washoe County has on their website, you can take a look at the very north end. The largest piece included within this complete proposal is that large area in red at the top northwest side. That is the Bedell Flat. Supposedly it is proposed by Tumwa to be a injection basin, kind of using it as a sponge where they would take water rights, store them, and then extract. And that piece, of the total proposal, Tumwa is asking for 10,334 acres. So of the 15,000 odd acres. So this is I would anticipate a very large piece of that. This is kind of up near the Dogskin Mountains, near Winnemucca Ranch. We do have concerns in there. It is popular for hunting, for recreation. So trying to work with them to see what alternatives there may be. Again, we have not seen a draft of the bill. They're still working on it. Should be a draft to be released in the near future, they were expecting. But we don't know all of the specifics that are in the bill. We haven't seen the language. And these proposals as far as lands for exchange or withdrawal are continuing to change with time. And you'll see that there's a draft date on here that definitely that is represented as October 26, 2016. And I was at a public lands meeting, or a public meeting just the other day where there were other options proposed and other discussions. So I would anticipate that these numbers will continue to fluctuate. But looking here in the north is that's probably the biggest piece that is noticeable within their proposal, is that Battelle Tumwa proposal. Then moving down into the mid, you can take a look here. They've got some of those total sections on the east side of Sparks. Again, those are mostly Tumwa proposals. Looking, the way it was described to us was that they would be wells and tanks, which are much smaller than total section type proposals. So there's an expectation that that will be decreasing. There's also, you can see the third hatch on that east side is also proposed to be a Truckee Meadows water reclamation facility. Again, it seems like a large ask. It might be reduced by some significant portion. One of the concerns on that side is the access, getting back into the Pah-Ros and that Spanish Springs Peak. A lot of that access has kind of gone away through the years, the traditional access, so that would be one of our concerns in that area. Other things, like I say, when you look at these, there are different rationale between, as far as the ask. When you look at some of these centerpieces, number one, that's the city of Sparks, kind of in the center of the gray there. You look at that, and they're looking at that for a possible cemetery site, kind of up near Wedekin, and also a possible school site with the recent passage of Washoe County 1. Moving to the south, you can see that this is mostly just request for the smaller parcels in that Mount Rose area, kind of across from north of Callahan Ranch. There's a bunch of small intermixed Forest Service parcels that are up there that the county's looking to pick up. Probably one of the more significant pieces and chunks that are being requested from Forest Service is that section that's right there near Steamboat Hills. There is a mule deer herd that does occupy that, takes advantage of that open space. And then moving down towards Incline, you can see that there is a proposal for an expansion there, both for the ski area. I'm not a skier, so I can't tell you which one it is, but Incline has interest in that. And then also the university is asking for a piece in there to make that connection from Little Valley to basically abut that ski area. Another important piece, because you look at that, and that's basically that ridge of the Sierras, and ensuring continuity and migration corridors for those mule deer moving, or all wildlife moving through those areas. One thing I did miss on the middle map was, if you can look along the Truckee, there's many small parcels that are identified in there. Along the Truckee River, a lot of it's been privatized, but there are pieces that are being requested within that, and the rationale was given the amount of development that's occurring out there, they wanted to basically tie that up. Some of it was for floodwater actions, Truckee River, and I think they've asked for 469 total acres for Truckee Meadows water or flood control under this proposal. So it isn't as large as some people have asked or thought. And one of the rumors, Commissioner McNinch mentioned it earlier, is the connection. People are thinking that this is connected to Amadee's bill, HR 1484, that was just recently heard. It is not. It's its own standalone bill. As I mentioned, the language hasn't been fully developed, and they should be releasing that in the near future. However, within this there is a proposal by Friends of Nevada Wilderness to incorporate a number of wilderness areas in Washoe County. You can see them here. I go playing with my glasses. The total request for wilderness is 495,000 acres, with the biggest portion being in the Buffalo Hills wilderness area, then followed by the Massacre Rim, Walt Canyon area, Macy, Granite, Banjo. So this kind of gives you an overview of those proposals. Many of them are wilderness study areas that they're actually looking to modify, and they're actually letting go of some of that wilderness study area and shrinking the size of them. But you can look specifically going through them. The next one, or the Buffalo Hills, this gives a pretty good depiction of what they've done to trim that up. It does have a fair number of cherry stem roads in it to maintain access, but when you look, the concerns that we have in some of this area especially is not that it's wilderness, but that the values that come along with wilderness and how it ties our hands as far as restoration, reclamation. In this country we have a lot of cheatgrass, and we're actually starting to see the expansion of a species of plant that it's even worse, Medusa head. And I could think of nothing worse than seeing something designated as wilderness and getting invaded by Medusa head and tying our hands as to how we can address that. So some of the issues that we have, with these are trying to maintain our flexibility and being able to conserve and restore, maintain those values that are on those lands. Again, another conflicting issue in many of these areas are the wild horse and burro populations. It's tough to manage wild horse and burros on a wilderness area because of the minimum tool analysis. So roundups become a little bit more a tougher thing to do. Many of these areas do have guzzlers. I don't have them depicted on this map. Knowing that these are in development and final language and final proposals aren't finalized, we'll continue to work with Friends of Nevada Wilderness to identify our issues and try to minimize. But this is the north end of the Buffalo Hills here. It's kind of that Poodle Mountain country on over to the state line, running down into north of I just blanked on the creek, Smoke Creek, running down towards Smoke Creek. It's good country, it's got good wildlife. Here's the southern end of this. It's running from that Smoke Creek down into that Dry Valley Rim country. If you're familiar with this country at all, much of it has been burned. It's definitely in a degraded habitat as far as some of the lower elevations. Some of the better upper areas are in decent condition, but definitely threats from cheatgrass and other invasives. The other proposal is the Fox Range, south of Gerlach, north of the Pyramid Lake tribal lands. I believe this one's, 73,000 acres. Again, some good wildlife habitat access in there. I know that there have been a couple things that have been pointed out as far as being improved. The other, Granite Banjo Wilderness. Looking at this one's 40,000 acres. It's much of that upper granites. Some of the stuff to the north going into rock and some of that country could probably, we do see a lot of hunter access up in there. There are some cherry stems, but there may be some opportunities to maybe work with them to see what we could do as far as modifying this proposal. Macy Wilderness, kind of up towards the state line with Oregon. Smaller proposal for sure, 29,000 acres. Does have guzzlers on it. We would like to identify those, and as was mentioned earlier in the naval piece, work with them to ensure that we have maintenance abilities and access to those on all of these. Massacre rim, 79,000, almost 80,000 in that massacre rim. Again, we do have water developments and interest in that country. But all of these are available on the website. We will be working to, as we get the final language, we will be working to put together all of our concerns and capture them. We do have initial scoping on most of these, like this Wall Canyon. We've got you can see that it's around that Wall Canyon Reservoir. We do want some access as far as we've got a fish barrier in there to protect the sensitive species of fish that are in there, Wall Canyon sucker. Also looking to try to increase some access in there as far as cherry stem roads. So that's the wilderness proposals overall that they're looking to include in this bill. Again, it's early in the process, that's the good thing, so there's a lot of opportunity to provide comment and get that incorporated. We've got a draft here. We will be supplying comments to Washoe County. They have hosted a couple different public meetings. I think it was Washoe County Commission hosted those meetings. Our regional supervisor has been in touch with the Washoe County Lands Planner, as well as John Toll and both myself. So we are aware and we are watching and trying to make sure that, especially as the Washoe County proposals move forward, that we have a voice and can help them identify where wildlife priorities and sensitivities are, but then also, as these wilderness proposals work forward, that we can get an opportunity to help maybe refine some of those. So with that, I'll take anything. Any questions?
Thank you, Alan. Any questions? Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Alan, did the county reach out to NDOW at all through this process, or did you have to initiate that communication?
We do have constant communication with Cheryl Surface, who's kind of their open lands liaison, and we do have constant communication with her. So we were aware of this. The process probably hasn't been as open as other examples with land bills across the state, but we were aware. It's just been kind of a less than well-structured process.
And I think that's part of why I had reached out and asked for it to be an agenda item there. At the workshop, you're kind of talking about we're at the beginning of the process, and that hasn't been relayed. As a matter of fact, the county commission, one of the county commissioners in their kind of opening comments and thoughts on the whole workshop process had commented that the bill will be introduced in a couple of weeks in the lame duck session of Congress. That was tempered as the meeting went on, but I think that the angst that we're seeing is largely from that initial push to get this done. And there's certainly a lot of people that are worked up about it, and it was kind of based on a perception, and some of it had been supported by comments from the commission, the county commission, that this is something that's kind of a done deal and it's moving forward. And that's why I asked the question, had they reached out to us at all at the Department of Wildlife? Because certainly we've seen these bills many times in the past, and we have a really good roadmap with what happened at the Pine Forest. I think that's an incredible example of a long process, but a very collaborative process. And at the end of the day, everybody's able to shake hands and look across the table and say, I may not agree with everything, but I'm okay. I've got consensus. I can go here. And this one, And I think that that's what people are hoping for in this process. And I'm talking about everybody from wilderness proponents to Coalition for the coalition. They'd all expressed concerns about this thing moving too fast. So I'll probably have more comments, but I think that those are some of the driving points of wanting to talk about it a little today. So I appreciate the update.
Commissioner Drew.
Just a couple of initial thoughts now that I'm out of the penalty box down here, but I agree with Commissioner McNinch. I've had staff from multiple members of our congressional delegation who have told me that there are both interest groups and local governments who are pushing for this bill to get done in the lame duck session of Congress. In my opinion, having looked at a lot of land bills, that's probably the worst thing you could do, because the faster you push these things, the more oversights you have and the more unintended negative consequences you have. And frankly, I have a lot of concerns on both the disposal part, whether it be Bedell Flat or some of these other areas, why they aren't pursuing other mechanisms, maybe through the Carson City RMP for recreation public purpose use, if it truly is that they just want to develop a school or a water plant or whatever the case may be. In terms of the wilderness, I would say just knowing some of those areas, I would say some of those areas that are being proposed have marginal wilderness value at best. I think the noxious weed issue is a major concern. I'd be curious, Alan, to know if anyone's overlaid the wilderness maps with the resilience resistance work that WAFWA has done, because I think that would be an eye-opening exercise, and maybe that's something the department could look into. But I guess I would encourage this commission at this point maybe to pen a letter both to Washoe County and our congressional delegation urging that this not be passed in a lame duck session of Congress, which I've been told by the delegation is next to impossible, although I've heard that before and seen it happen. But also to Washoe County to ask for a longer process, a more collaborative work group to dig through some of these issues, and that if not someone from this commission, definitely someone from the department needs to be part of those discussions. And if someone from this commission is willing to do it, and I'm looking at my commissioner from Washoe County, I think that would be appropriate. I know there's been a lot of talk about how much collaborative support this bill has, and at the same time I ran into a member of the Washoe County Commission who represents much of the area. In fact, I think her district includes all the wilderness being proposed, and she's the one dissenting vote on the Washoe County Commission from what she told me. So there's just a lot of disparity in what I'm hearing. I think it's a good time for us to bring this up, and I'd encourage the commission as we go forward to maybe think about a letter that suggests slowing down this process, because I think there's a lot of ramifications on both ends of this, and I don't think it's been vetted nearly as much as it should have been to this point.
Just to respond to that, if I could, Chairman Wallace, to Commissioner Drew and McNish's comments is what I heard the other day from Bill, the Washoe County planner, was that two of the commissioners had committed to slowing down the process, and that they were aware that there was that scrutiny coming. But I think a letter, from the commission pushing that and CCing the delegates, maybe that would help them carry that forward and ensure that.
Commissioner McNinch.
So I'll add a couple more quick comments. The perception is that it hasn't been a real open process, although I think that we got to take that with a grain of salt. I think it's just people's perspective kind of getting hit with it all at one time, and not, and now there's modifications occurring to the thing, and the questions are, who's providing the input that's driving the change? Because a lot of the constituents that I'm hearing from, and I'm talking a broad spectrum of them, aren't providing those comments themselves. That's what they're frustrated about. But there's one of the other major concerns is, okay, well, this, it's easy to say, well, we're doing this for recreational purposes. There's things in place now. The Recreation and Public Purposes Act allows for things to occur for lands, federal lands or public lands to be utilized by the county for those purposes, so those are in place. So it's not it doesn't have to be a land ownership thing to get some of these things done that they're hoping for. It's been done many times. There's a lot of examples of that in Washoe County. But one of the bigger concerns is the concept of doesn't appear to be any budget talk for maintaining these lands. So what people I think are concerned about is that these lands are transferred to the county, and then as county-owned lands, they're going to be sold for whatever purpose, because they're not necessarily locked into things, and some of that would be because they can't afford to maintain it. And so I think that's a concern that hasn't been discussed at those levels. So so these are real concerns. They're legitimate concerns. We know that I think that there's a broad recognition for the need to consider growth and not in any urban area. You have to have growth. I mean, it's going to occur wherever. I think what people are hoping for is responsible, open discussion, transparency, the whole 9 yards. And so I don't think that this is an land transfer issue as much as it is making sure that it's done right with all the right inputs and stuff like that. So.
Further commission questions for Mr. Janay? Hearing none, we'll move to Section B. Proposed Washoe County Federal Lands Bill. Chairman Wallace for possible action. The commission will discuss the proposed Washoe County Federal Lands Bill and may take action to develop a letter with the department's assistance stating the commission's position. Comments from the commission?
I agreed with Commissioner Drew that we should draft some correspondence to not only Washoe County but to the congressional delegation, encouraging and a slower process and managing the perception that it's not necessarily an open process at this time by opening up a collaborative. And I would even go so far as to say that again, I'll go back to what happened in the Pine Forest Range. It's a model for how this kind of stuff can be done, and in my mind should be done. It's a painful process, but the ultimate product at the end is a good solid one that has broad support. That goes way beyond the conversation itself. It's something that everybody buys into, that they all support, that they'll all get behind in the future, they'll all protect, defend. It goes broader than that. And, I think that we should draft some correspondence that reflects that mindset.
Any other comments from the commission before I take it out for public comment? Commissioner Hubbs.
It's more of a question. So what is the issue with the lame duck session? Like, what's the urgency here that's driving it? That's what I feel like I'm missing.
I think I can answer that at my own peril. I think it's the pending retirement of a certain senator who's had a lot of success in history of getting land bills passed.
Anything further from the commission before I take it out? All right, we'll start with public comment in Las Vegas.
No comment in Las Vegas, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment in Carson City. Come on up, Judy.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, Judy Karen for the record. I compliment you all and thank you very much for discussing this today about the Washoe County Lands Bill. And I don't think it's just for Washoe County. This affects our whole state. So when you're talking about writing a letter with the input from the department, I hope you also reach out to the governor's office. There's a lot of tourism that goes on in this area in Washoe County, especially the northern part. I have been in on the process working with some of the maps dealing with wilderness. One of the maps that went up today, you'll see on the Fox Range, was originally a wildlife study area, or wilderness study area. You'll notice that it's completely filled in. When we had the county public comment period on November 4th, I asked at the tables why that was completely filled in. And it was noted, we haven't had the public process of the working groups that originally looked at some of these areas, so they filled everything in. So definitely, we need to mention that. We haven't had the public comment of the working groups that have been working with Friends of Nevada Wilderness to look at the Fox Range. So definitely, we do need to slow down the process. Some of the landowners who are grazers or have AUMs, I'll guess you say that, are out of California in the northern part that have areas over there. They need to be brought into the process. Some of the individuals from the Gerlach area haven't had the opportunity to be brought in. Mining is another one. A big thing too is our sage grouse that needs to be touched on. And as Commissioner Drew brought up, we need to overlay those maps. So I think there still is a lot to be done, but definitely try to bring in the governor's office to send this to our congressional delegation. And once again, thank you for addressing this.
Thank you, Judy. Further public comment in Carson City? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and action. Commissioner Drew.
So, Mr. Janay, I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but my understanding is that there have been at least some loosely affiliated work groups that have kind of helped put some of the components of this together. Do you know who those work groups have been led by, whether or not there's been invitation to the department to help work through these issues, or is that invitation just kind of come by way of some of the more recent broader countywide workshops and things of that nature?
Yes, Commissioner Drew, it's definitely the latter. It's been, kind of as we were made aware of the lands bill, these aren't new wilderness areas, so there have been past discussions, but there hasn't been a concerted effort to reach out and work with us. We haven't had a point-to-point discussion with Friends of Nevada Wilderness or anyone else as far as the merits or failures of any of these in recent times.
Vice Chairman Johnston.
I guess I am, having been in Yerington and going through this on a much smaller scale, which was a federal lands transfer for the benefit of a mining operation, and then it went through the process of, well, if you get the federal lands transfer, then we're going to require this wilderness area, and you're going to get the economic development. And then above on top of that, then we're going to have a conservation easement for the benefit of sage grouse. And the federal land transfer went through. The mining company now owns the once owned federal land. We have a wilderness area, but no mining activity, no economic boom. And we don't have the conservation easement on the Desert Creek Ranch for the benefit of sage grouse because the mining company, and I should disclose I'm involved in litigation over that issue, hasn't purchased it. And I just very much feel that a federal land transfer, and I know that's not the way it works in Washington, but the transfer of federal lands should pass or fail on its own merits. And wilderness designations should exist on their own merits, and they shouldn't be tied to one another in the way they're constantly being tied together. I'm not opposed to wilderness areas, but I'm opposed to wilderness designation just for the sake of designating more acres as wilderness area. I think there are great places, and I've had the benefit of being in some of the most incredible wilderness areas there are in this country, up in central Idaho, in Nevada. And I look at some of these areas and I think, not so certain these are quite the same types of areas that are right wilderness. I think this, and this is just to say, this whole thing needs to just slow down, closer look at it all, and don't just say in exchange for this acres of federal lands being transferred, You have to look at that issue, and then you have to look at the wilderness, and don't do a tit for tat in the way that seems to occur in some of these transfer issues. So I also have just concerns about with wilderness designations. This is why brought up by the department, how that impacts the ability to manage that habitat if it is in fact designated wilderness. I always have a concern about that. It's not just, to me, the access issue by motorized vehicles is oftentimes a small piece of the puzzle in the greater scheme of how the designation can impact the ability to go in and do things when things are needed. So,
Commissioner Young.
I do agree with Brad to a large extent of that. Wilderness designation has always been something with me that initially I was opposed to strongly. My mother-in-law was the chairman of Friends of Nevada Wilderness for many years. And I can think about the fights we had at our dinner table and family gatherings 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I'd see the sign there on my trail, the little brown thing that says the designation, where I drove my truck or my Blazer slowly up a canyon that I'd hunted, my dad had hunted, and I didn't seem to be disturbing much, and in the bigger picture. But then I saw a couple things occur that sometimes just defied logic too. Not being able to land a police helicopter, and I was the commander of the search and rescue unit at Metro for many years, in an area to do a rescue of a human being without getting grief or threats by the federal government that you could not fly this helicopter or actually land it to pick up a patient. But then along came the HOVs, or these four-wheelers, or whatever you want to call them. And over a period of time, I've done a 180, because I think they have destroyed the hunting environment in many ways. Ruined hunts that I've been on, provide access to people that I don't even sure they know what they're accessing, just so they could run these things up and down trails, loud noises, take them off trails, designated trails. Damn things will go down almost anywhere. And I think it's a very, very fine balance. And I think due care has to be taken before we recommend wilderness areas. And I think Senator Reid has abused, in some cases, by putting in for huge swaths of land without all the thought taken in there for the multitude of use. And I just hope our department is, when we write letters and we move on these things, that we look at the very, very big long-term picture, not 5-year blocks, but 30-year blocks or 50-year blocks. And to this day, I thank my mother-in-law, because that's what she was looking at. And I didn't see that when I was younger. I do now. So I'm all for, Alan and our department putting a lot of thought into this and getting very involved in this for our future.
Thank you, Bill. John?
Yeah, I agree with both of them, actually. I believe in multiple use. I think that you look at the wilderness areas, there's a need for them. They serve a great purpose, but you also have to have areas that you can go recreating with the OHVs. And so every proposal needs to stand on its own merit, not be linked together for sure.
Commissioner Hubbs?
When I think about wilderness areas, and the rapid rate in which we're losing habitat, every day here in our nation, across the nation, they become more important to me. And I know for people who want to get out and go someplace quiet and connect again with nature. So I really do value wilderness areas, but I understand the complexity with giving up land for multiple use as well. That being said, if we fear that there is a real risk that this is being pushed too quickly, I certainly wouldn't oppose a letter stating that we could slow it down and let it go through a typical process. I'm not 100% sure what you were speaking to, Commissioner McNinch, in terms of the prior land transfer. I was wondering if you could just share that once again really quickly, what transpired and what your concerns were. The one that took place before this one? Did you say there was another one that you had concern with?
I may have, but I'm not drawing a connection right now. But I mentioned Pine Forest up in Humboldt County. It was a Humboldt County Lowndes bill, and there were, a lot of the same concerns and way different habitat than we're talking here for sure. But a lot of different interests still involved, still had a lot of input, a lot of concerns. And Jeremy, help me out here, as that process started, it got in loggerheads pretty quick. Everybody kind of went into their own corner and came out swinging, and they were going to defend their own particular interests. And this has a little bit of the same feel, but what happened out of that was, it was actually a former employee. He would never want to take sole credit for it, but the Department of Wildlife kind of just said, hey, wait a minute, everybody take time out and go to the corner. There's better ways of doing this. So there was a conversation that started, and it ended up with everybody from representatives from NDOW to special interest groups all across the board to just anybody that you could think of, representatives from agencies, and they sat down and went through a real long process of saying, okay, here's what's on the table, you're in this corner, you're in this corner, everybody's in a corner, what's it going to take to get everybody in the middle of the room and buy off on this public lands bill that needs to be done? And they came to a very high level of consensus on what that would look like, introduced it, and it went through without any problems. And what it boils down to is that there's unconditional, there's consensus. They cut away, the fat from their concerns and said, this really, although I'm concerned about it, am I going to hang up on this particular issue? It was a true consensus process, and when they got all done, they had a level of consensus that everybody could live with. They weren't tearing into any one interest in a way that would offend those, that would keep them from coming to the table and saying, you know what, I can accept this and I can agree to it. And that's kind of what I'm referencing. And that's just how it should be done, all these processes.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, just to clarify, in Humboldt County, it was basically 2 existing wilderness study areas. It wasn't a countywide lands bill. It was led by Trout Unlimited, I think, facilitated the working group, but the working group kind of included, the county commission, grazing interests from the area, sportsmen, I'm sure mineral interests, I'm probably missing a few, but basically just to deal with that one, or those 2 areas that were in close association with one another, took them a year or 18 months to kind of work out all of the kinks. And everyone holds that up as the model and then tries to, get a lands bill done in a 6-month time period or something like that. And I guess that's my point in saying this is, you look at Humboldt County, they took 2 wilderness study areas. It took them 18 months or whatever it took to get to consensus that the county commission and everyone could buy off on. And now we're looking at Washoe County, where we have all the moving pieces of, we're going to have lands for disposal, lands for all these different uses. We've got 5 or 6 or 7.5 million acres worth of wilderness, and we're trying to ram it through in the next 3 months. And to me, that equals a big train wreck. And so I think, if we develop a letter just saying, hey, we recommend that everyone slows down, maybe you form a working group like that one that was formed in Humboldt County and work through these issues a little better. It doesn't always make the political process in the end any easier. Humboldt County, I think, still had to get attached to the National Defense Authorization Act, which is an irony in itself. But at least the process is a little bit better and a little more sound when you kind of get to the political piece.
Okay, and just one more question and concern, and it's related to, I know it's access and potentially accessing it for hunting wilderness areas. The general rule is you can still hunt, it's just accessing that area, correct? It becomes a little bit more complicated to get back in those areas.
Commissioner Drew. Alan.
For the record, Alan Janae. Yeah, it's typically what happens is there is a selection process where they will close roads, and so hunter access recreational access can be cut off. There's many examples where they'll assess, what's needed. Oftentimes, access to private lands is maintained, but most of the others, if they're deemed in the evaluation process that unnecessary, they can be closed. And so, hunters, fishermen, hikers, bird watchers, those are all excluded from that area as far as driving access. Again, like you mentioned, there is hiking access, but on larger wilderness areas, that does become a tougher piece as far as if you close roads that go back in multiple miles. But, it's part of that wilderness perspective, so.
Chairman.
Commissioner Young?
Kirsten, for an example, I think there's some positives to that too. From a hunting perspective, I'll use the example for me. I had this thing called a tote goat this preceded the four-wheelers, and I could drive it into the Jarbidge Wilderness area and put a deer on it and drive out. When the wilderness was designated, that ended motorized vehicles forever in that area. So it wouldn't require me to buy a backpack and learn how to, quarter up a deer and pack it out on my back, or go to the ranchers and try to get them to take it out. But it does further your hunting skills in some ways, and there's certainly created some environments where the hunting has gotten better, in my opinion, because of the wilderness areas. There's a lot to this. It's not a simple answer, and there's a variety of things and people, users, even wilderness proponents, that suddenly they realized they couldn't get to areas that, as they got older, that they normally would access, or they claim to access. I'm not sure that a lot of them actually really used some of the wilderness area the way they said they did. Some did, some didn't. And so it's a bigger picture thing, and it's a long-term view that you got to take, and I think Alan's in the position to look at a lot of those things from that perspective.
Vice Chairman Johnston.
And just additional comment is that some of the debate centers around in hunts and wilderness areas or other access, not just hunting, but you can access them on horseback. And that has a cost associated with it. And you either own the horses or you hire a guide to take a great summer trip on horseback into these wilderness areas, or in the hunting seasons you may hire a guide that has the livestock to be able to do that. It makes it much more accessible in that way. And some say that cuts off the area to some people who don't have those financial means. At the same time, I've hunted on horseback in wilderness areas, and it is a unique, awesome experience. I mean, it really is. And I'm very grateful I've had the opportunity to do that. But that's part of the discussion.
Commissioner Olmberg?
Yes, I had a question. Obviously, we can conduct our aerial surveys using a helicopter. Where do they draw the line in the wilderness? Can we drop supplies off to maintain these guzzlers? Can we drop water off, or is it strictly we can patrol?
As was to Commissioner Olmberg, as was mentioned earlier on the naval, typically what we can do is we can work to incorporate that language so that we would have that provision, to maintain the guzzler. That's typically what we have to do, is make sure that there's language in there to incorporate that. One of the other things that we see, is also provisions for things such as simple as transmitters, radio collars on animals. We've run into issue with that just recently. I will ask that John Toll, Staff Specialist, if he can think of anything else to add to this conversation.
Just two quick comments. One, there's currently an MOU with the BLM that is supposed to simplify some of that management opportunity stuff. I think Mr. Bentley down south is very familiar with that and utilizing that, as well as some of the challenges that that wilderness designations created. So there is an additional management layer. It can be done with planning. It can be onerous at times. It can be variable based on the individuals in that particular field office, but it is possible. And then the other part of that is the
Installations.
yeah, the collaring issue is definitely becoming something that we're quite disturbed and concerned by. The 2012 Wilderness Management Manual from the BLM came out with some specific language that says wildlife collar devices are to be treated as traditional installations in wilderness. That basically means you have to go through a process similar to putting in a cell tower or something like that. And that is an issue that we've been working on multiple fronts and at the national level. And Director Wadsley's been involved with conversations with key people to try and move the bar on that. I think it was a mistake that people in the BLM weren't aware of, and that other people were, and it happened. It's starting to create some issues for us, and we've got to find out a way to fix that. Legislation is an opportunity to do such a thing. If we could get language in the legislation that changes how that is treated, that could be beneficial.
Commissioner Drew.
And I guess it gets to one of my bigger concerns. Access is kind of one ball of wax, but I think the bigger concern for me from a broader wildlife standpoint is the limitations that it sometimes places on important things, and especially northern Washoe County, like how you attack a fire, how you rehabilitate a fire, how you deal with invasive and noxious weeds. So it's kind of an irony, and I've argued this since I was in college, that you'll designate a pristine wilderness, and that's mostly the purpose for designating, is to keep it pristine. But if it has invasive or noxious species or is surrounded by, there's the potential it could burn, and you could have a pristine wilderness full of invasive and noxious species if you're not allowed to go in and do some of the active management that has shown at least some marginal success in resolving that issue. And having not even seen the language of the lands bill to know whether or not those provisions are in there, it seems awfully hasty to pass a bill that we still don't have language for in the next month and a half. So there's a whole other, I think, layer of issues it creates from a wildlife standpoint.
Barnes.
I'm going to agree with what Commissioner Drew said about the rehab and restoration efforts, and the fact that Medusa Head was even mentioned up there. That's really serious. I'm somewhat familiar with a little bit of that, and that can completely take over where it's not good for anything. And that in itself is a huge, huge issue, and I don't think if anybody understands that, realize how big of an issue that is within itself, and it takes an awful lot to try to get rid of that. And we're still trying to figure out how to do it, I think.
If there's nothing further from the commission, I think I'd be looking for a motion here so we can move on down the road. Commissioner Drew.
I would make a motion to develop a comment letter that would go to the Washoe County Commission, Governor's Office, and Congressional Delegation. That would include a request not to pass the Washoe County's lands bill during the current Congress, and that would be due to unresolved issues with multiple use, disposal, and wilderness proposals. That we would encourage a more detailed and collaborative effort that may include a working group or a broader working group such as that was developed for the Pine Forest Wilderness Act. That such a group would include representatives from NDOW, the Wildlife Commission, and wildlife NGOs, and that more time be afforded to resolve outstanding issues.
I'll second the motion, and with that offer that Commissioner Drew work with the department in drafting that letter.
Maybe the penalty box didn't look so bad, but I would be happy to work with the department. I don't know if they would have time to draft, kind of get us started, but I would also encourage that maybe Commissioner McNinch, since he is our Washoe County representative, also be included in at least the review of that letter before it goes out.
Commissioner Hubbs.
I just wanted to say, I didn't receive really much input from the general public on this issue, so I'm kind of left with trying to figure out how they might interpret this, but are we just speaking to the haste of the passage, or are we speaking specifically to the use of it as wilderness? I think I would like clarity on that.
I guess in my mind, as the motion maker, I think the haste is probably my primary concern. And in requesting that they put together a collaborative working group, it gets to some of those other concerns that we've discussed today. But I would be open to including some of those concerns that we discussed in a short list in the letter. Maybe we identify some of the quote-unquote unresolved issues. Rather than just throwing that out there, we put a bullet point for some of the key points that have been discussed by this group today. If that's all right with everyone.
Is that okay with the second?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Drew and a second by Commissioner Johnston. Is everyone clear with the motion? I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.